I am here at this part of the Antonine Wall, which I was going to do a few weeks ago, and there's this huge noise coming from across there. I suggest it was perhaps somebody who is hoovering their garden, and that's exactly what it sounds like. But I'm going to have a go in doing it here because getting out and about was part of the reason why I was doing these things, and I suppose I just need to get back to it. And it's here in Milngavie, and it's a lovely part of the world, and it's got this fantastic excavated part of the gardens from Roman times. What a week! It's been an incredible week. When I consider that this week I have seen my son sitting up till 10, half 10 at night, watching the House of Commons and the unfolding drama, demonstrates for me that the politicisation of the young within Scotland in 2014 through the referendum is something that has actually continued. It's not something that we've lost. Young people are increasingly interested in politics and taking to the streets, as we've seen over the last few weeks, not only in the campaign against Brexit, but also the campaign for Scottish independence. There have been marches in Aberdeen and Ayr, my own hometown, in Glasgow, Edinburgh and elsewhere, attempting to get some kind of resolution to the issues that our country face. All our countries face. England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, north and south of Ireland in particular. And that politicisation and the sort of protests that have happened, for some would probably feel, in particularly the United Kingdom, useless, pointless, because they make no difference. Well, do you know what's interesting? In Russia right now there are elections in St. Petersburg and in Moscow for local government, which may give an indication of just exactly how strong, or not so strong, the resistance to Vladimir Putin actually is. In fact, there is a tremendous number of people, commentators in particular, who believe that Putin's power is about to be really dealt a significant blow because of the protests that have been in the streets of Moscow turning into political power. Carrie Lim, the Hong Kong governor, has been forced to abandon the bill due to the protests from those in Hong Kong, and their next desire is to see universal suffrage in Hong Kong, which may well be under the Chinese policy of one country, two systems. A step too far, but who's to know? And the death this week of somebody at one point in the 1970s who, going into the 1980s and the early 1980s in particular, was an absolute hero, Robert Mugabe. A man who is the head of ZANU-PF with Joshua Nkomo, began the dismantling of a white apartheid-like state in southern Rhodesia, named it Zimbabwe, and then became an absolute tyrant. Died aged 95 in Singapore, a place where he'd been going to for some medical treatment because of his cancer. A man who Nelson Mandela once described as the problem with Robert Mugabe, he said, was that he was the star and then the sun rose. And his ego was something, like with Vladimir Putin, like with Carrie Lim, that potentially made him the person that he ended up being. And arrogance is something that has been evident over the last week with regards to the British government. None more so in the nature of a man who has more vocabulary than sense, Jacob Rees-Mogg. A man who has epitomised the contempt with which the feelings of those who don't believe that we should be pursuing Brexit at any cost has been displayed for all to see in the House of Commons. Lots have been made out of his lounging about the House of Commons and the way that he's behaved, but there are other aspects of the British government that I think have become increasingly difficult to comprehend and understand in terms of a strategy. The Conservative Party and the Conservative government are now hostages to fortune. They have no control anymore. The opposition have all the control. They are able to decide tomorrow, being Monday, as to whether or not they will back, which they won't, a call for a general election, because they're going to wait until after the 31st of October. The Conservative Party have through their decision to prorogue Parliament, left very little opportunity for people to debate Brexit and very little opportunity now for them to challenge what is happening. So that there will be a legal bill going through Parliament which will stop us leaving the European Union with absolutely no deal. Once that is passed, once that is legislative powers are in place, then we won't be leaving on the 31st of October. But it gives a number of people a real problem because there will be a general election. The Conservative Party do not have a government that is fit to govern because it doesn't have a majority in the House of Commons anymore. And Amber Rudd this morning has resigned, Cabinet Minister, because of the fact that they have taken over 20 people's membership cards and torn them up because they voted against the government. And I go back to Jacob Rees-Mogg, a man who has voted against his own government over 100 times and is sitting lounging on the front benches. And people like Nicholas Soames, Ken Clarke, it doesn't matter what you think about these people were servants to their party and believers in a cause. Nicholas Soames was on the Guardian broadcast this week and said something incredibly interesting. He has been noticed and known this week and for a couple of weeks now as the grandson of Winston Churchill. An iconic figure, not only in the Conservative Party, but in British history. Soames has had the whip withdrawn on the basis that he voted against the government because he has been told by the Prime Minister that his stance has threatened and undermined the bargaining position of the UK government in Europe. In the 1930s, his grandfather, Winston Churchill, was threatened with exactly the same by Neville Chamberlain, the Prime Minister, for exactly the same reason, that his behaviour was undermining and threatening the cause of British negotiations in Europe. Now in the 1930s it was obviously Adolf Hitler and the rise of fascism. This year it's not the same threat from Europe, but is it the same threat from the United Kingdom? Should we not applaud Nicholas Soames, applaud the Conservative Party members who have decided, like Rory Stewart and Ken Clarke, that they cannot in all conscience support a government who's going to do something so disastrous, rather than condemn them once again because they're part of a party that they don't like. So the government in the United Kingdom has fallen apart, perhaps not as quickly and obviously as the Scottish football team, who, I remember there was the toe poke against Brazil. It was David Neri who scored at a World Cup, and they all gathered back to the centre circle afterwards. I think it was Gordon Strachan, he turned to everybody and went, "Oh no, we've upset them." And the Brazilians went on to win 4-1. And that seemed to come back to haunt Scotland against Russia. In 10 minutes we're 1-0 up, they lost 2-1. So we've got to beat Belgium tomorrow night. There's no chance. Absolutely no chance, it would appear. Except we're Scotland. And you know, we do things in such a terribly awful, difficult manner. We lose the easy ones and we win the difficult ones. So who's to know? But what it does demonstrate is, I do believe that Scottish football is a great place just now. There's some very competitive work being done within the lower leagues, and I think there's some fantastic work being done within our game. Even though United is not going to be part of it, we get knocked out of our second cup of the season, the Tunnock's Tea, Coke, Cake, Caramel, Wafer, whatever it is, the old Challenge Cup, by going down to Brexit and losing in penalties 6-5 now. That has had a lot of criticism because it has Irish teams, Northern Irish teams, English teams, Welsh teams from lower leagues. And I remember the first game that I ever went to see was the Texaco Cup, Ayr United versus Leicester City. And Leicester City's team in number 1 was Peter Shilton, and in Ayr United's team in number 8 was Alec Ferguson. And that hooked me onto football and hooked me onto Ayr United. So I see this thing right now as being probably a great way of gathering people back into football. And in terms of football this week as well, the Scottish Football Supporters Association have been involved in Thistle Forever. Our Chief Executive Chair, I can never remember what Paul's title is, but Paul Goodwin is a Thistle supporter and has done a fantastic job in terms of gathering support to challenge the takeover of Partick Thistle, to put fans' ownership back into the mix. And fans ownership is something that's become an increasingly big part of the work that Scottish Football Supporters Association do. And that part of that work is to try and get fans into the centre of the clubs and the community that they should be part of. And particularly when you read things like one of the Neville brothers saying that the heart of the community has been ripped out of Bury because of Bury FC, because they are supporters of Bury FC, it's obvious just exactly how important clubs are to communities. They are more, football clubs are more, in fact all sport clubs are more than just the sum of its own parts. It has an effect that ripples throughout the communities. In terms of writing this week, I have been looking at John Conte for Ringside Report, in particular how he lost and then he never regained his light heavyweight title. John is a well-known alcoholic and man who suffered towards the end of his career because drinking became more and more part of his culture. So there was a lot in there that I found really interesting, although he was robbed, literally robbed. That was important because it's now a week and a day since the O2 bill with Lomachenko and Campbell. And a couple of things that I had not forgotten to mention last week, but meant to mention. Let's start with Hughie Fury. Third time he's been up against somebody with some kind of ability and has fallen well short. Charlie Edwards, VAR in boxing, who knew it was going to be an issue? Losing his title to a low blow, and then instantly the WBC came in and said it's a no contest. Same thing happened in a sense with Joshua Boatse versus Ryan Ford. Ford took a knee and Boatse hit him, and I think in the way down, I don't think he was actually down at the time, but that was a WBO title fight, so it wasn't going to have the same authority coming in order to change it. And then we've got Lomachenko versus Campbell. There's been some criticism over Vasily Lomachenko. I believe that Vasily Lomachenko is the best boxer in the world, certainly of the modern era. Whether or not he is the best boxer ever is up for debate, but it's a debate. Lomachenko has 3 of the 4 world lightweight belts. He's not a lightweight. He is too small. He's beating big guys in the playground that he should have no right to beat, and people are saying, I was a bit disappointed, man. How? There's a possibility he could become the undisputed world lightweight champion in a weight above that which he should be at, and he's going to go back down. Luke Campbell demonstrated just exactly how good a fighter that man is. He was utterly fantastic, and he should take so much away from that. And I believe that Lomachenko will, I think that Luke Campbell will take a keep busy fight. I think Lomachenko will get his 4th belt, and then he will give them all up and go back down and wait, and therefore Luke Campbell will have an opportunity maybe in 1, 2, 3 fights fight for a world champion, because he is a world champion boxer. Absolutely superb. And also, while I'm on the topic, Joanne Calderwood, UFC Kilmarnock fighter, who went off to Abu Dhabi and won over the weekend. I know that my mate and chief George Stewart will have been sitting screaming at a screen somewhere when it was televised yesterday afternoon. Absolutely fantastic feat, wonderful. And so we are now ready for another week. I've got some interesting things to be doing this week, including going off to doing some training with our staff. Hopefully you haven't had the noise in the background too much. What you will also see behind me is the mist. Welcome to Scotland. It is very much becoming autumnal, and we're now getting to the point where it's colder and the summer is gone. Although those of us who live in Scotland know that the summer just tends to be something that is on a Tuesday and it's wet, and that's about it. So from me, on the scene of the battlements where the Romans attempted to stop the Scots from getting over, it's a week where the Scots down in Westminster have a job of ensuring that they keep the English and the rest from taking us into something we don't want to go. Till next week, bye for now.